All right, you guys, as you can see by the thumbnail, I'm back with another one like the other one. Not that one, but this one. So check it out, you guys. I got a banger for you. This one right here is called The Mexican Mafia Offers Chapo Protection. Now, I know this story's already been out in the media for about a week, and you guys have probably heard a lot of information about it. However, you guys know how I do it. I go in depth and I give you guys all the details. I'm gonna run this story along with another story that I was gonna run separate, and that's the story about Bat from Del Sol and Psycho from Paradise Hills. Both of these stories, they kind of intermingle. There's a lot of the same players that are involved in both stories, so I'm just gonna run them together. This story right here, there's no question about the fact that it's gonna be a long story. There's a lot to talk about in this story. So without further ado, let me get straight to it. So for starters, I obviously got to start out with Ronnie Ayala, somebody that you guys have heard me talk quite a bit about before in the past. Just a few of those stories that might be relevant in helping you guys understand some of the past issues that involves the Ayala brothers. You guys might want to scroll back on my channel and check out some of these stories. San Bernardino transition of power. This story right here dealt with Güero Verde from Verdugo and his wife, Carmen Rodriguez. This video speaks for itself, but as I'm sure some of you know, Güero Verde was a made member of the Mexican Mafia, and Carmen Rodriguez was his wife, who acted as his secretary / underboss. You know, the finality of that video is that both Güero Verde and his wife Carmen got wrapped up in Mexican Mafia politics, and in the end, they both got taken out. So here's one of the audios from that video that should hit close to home for anyone that hears it. It's the actual 911 call that was placed by Carmen's frantic daughter after she saw her mother get gunned down.
Okay, what's the address? What's the address? Ma'am, I need you to take a deep breath and give me an address. Ma'am, you have to. I can't help you if I don't know where you are.
I'm in 1655 Monterey Plaza, San Bernardino.
1665. What's going on?
1655. Somebody shot my mom, please.
Okay. Do you know who did this, honey? Is there her name? Hold on, honey. We're on the way. We have help on the way. I need you to answer some questions. How old was he?
I don't know.
Ma'am, I need you to guess. How? Just take a guess, honey. Ma'am, I need you to help me out. Okay, help me out. Okay, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, okay? What is your name?
So here's another short audio clip from that same video. After Carmen was hit, this is one Mexican Mafia associate confirming to another Mexican Mafia associate that the hit went down and that it was a success. It takes a minute for it to click and for this guy to get it. They were obviously trying to speak between lines, but when this guy told him that she's gone, she's here no more, he didn't understand what this guy was saying until finally it clicked and he understood.
People don't want to wait. That's something that you gotta, I was even gonna tell you to shoot Google's number and I'll get at Google, you know?
Hey, bro, I can't really sit too much on the phone, bro.
Yeah.
But he's gone, fool.
Yeah?
Yeah, he's gone. You know, Pops and your mom's, right?
Yeah.
From what I got, fool, she's no longer, you know?
Well, Pops and Mom?
You're supposed to say Pops and moms, right?
Yeah.
But mom's that what I heard, fool. And I see a little thing in the paper that she's no longer. You know what I mean?
She's not out there?
No, she's not. She's asleep, bro. I promise you, fool.
And finally, I'm gonna give you guys a bonus, a third audio clip from that same video. It's loaded with audio clips. You guys gotta check that video out. But here's another audio clip of Ronnie asserting his authority and drawing lines in the sand. And it's obvious from listening to this audio clip that the walls were starting to close in on Güero Verde. And eventually they did. After Carmen was gunned down, Güero Verde was given a hot shot in Pelican Bay by another individual who was striving to become a MAID member.
The email says that he's requesting that they open up a shop right there on the calle for him. So
right there in my body.
And right there.
Right. Well, what they gotta do, okay, but what they have to do before they do anything is they gotta check with Arizona. You know what I'm saying? Because Arizona is the new proprietor of all those areas. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, those are the rules. This was the decision that came down a while back. It just didn't happen, right? So Toro, we're going to have to tell Toro, right, to just hold up until we talk to Arizona. This thing can get trouble. We got to take a look. See, when Belo Verde was alive, Toro didn't have nothing. So it makes no difference whether he was alive or not. What happened here is that everything that Güero Verde had went to Gran Cañon. That's simple. In fact, Gran Cañon was already taking control of everything, even when he was alive, because Güero Verde told him he could have it. In fact, that's what happened. I remember that 3 months. Güero Verde said, I'm giving everything to Gran Cañon until this problem with me gets straightened out.
So the other videos are called Imeros Get Their Wings Clipped, Fishing Infraction, and the EME Draws the Line with the Administration. Those 3 videos will give you a better idea about how death row politics were different from politics in the rest of the state system, as well as the type of atmosphere that Ronnie single-handedly created for his people on death row in San Quentin. So for those of you that don't know, I have personal history with both Ronnie and his brother Hector, as I spent quite a few years in San Quentin's adjustment center with both of them. You know, I'm not going to get too much into it, but before they dismantled San Quentin's death row, the adjustment center is where they house all the condemned inmates that were validated by CDCR. Ronnie, his brother Hector, and Alfred Sandoval, Chato from Arizona Maravilla, were the 3 Mexican Mafia members that were there in San Quentin at that time, and I spent the better part of the 90s with them. So going off of my own personal knowledge about these guys, and not from the perspective of what's being portrayed in the media, Ronnie was definitely the visionary of these guys, and he was also the most aggressive. You know, Hector, he was the laid-back, mellow one. He was the thinker. He was the one that used a broader brush when looking at the bigger picture. You always have to have a cooler head that prevails and evaluates instead of making brash decisions. And this was definitely Hector. Don't get me wrong, Ronnie's a very intelligent, articulate individual. But Ronnie's been known to act on impulse, and at times, he's proven that he's had a short fuse. In fact, I'd be willing to bet my last dollar that a lot of the Sureños that were there in San Quentin on death row at that time were happy that Hector was there. Anyways, I'm not going to go into all the details of some of the past stories that I put out, but if you guys really have an interest on getting a first-hand look at how Ronnie operates, I would suggest that you pull those videos up on my channel and check them out. But anyways, let me get to this indictment and how this whole operation culminated over the course of the last 6 or 7 years. So again, what you're looking at here is more of the fallout that was created by the landmark ruling of the Todd Ashker and Danny Troxel class action lawsuit. I went into the dynamics of this in one of my past videos about this big convoluted melting pot of violent prone inmates that emanated from this class action lawsuit. To help some of you put it in perspective, here's a quick summary. So after Ashker and Troxel prevailed in this lawsuit, CDCR was basically forced to release all these validated gang members from the SHU and place them back out on the main lines. They had to. Their hands were tied and they were bound by this ruling from the federal courts. Essentially, CDCR only did what they were forced to do. But with the non-compliance threat of a federal receiver coming in and taking over the state system, there wasn't a whole lot they could do. Not only that, but they stood to lose a lot if a federal receiver did take over the state system. Trust me, it was something that they didn't want to happen. So they basically had to make the best out of the circumstances that the federal courts mandated on them, and that's what they did. But in my opinion, there's been nothing but chaos, pandemonium, and mayhem out there. And the federal indictments that you're seeing now from criminal organizations like the Nuestra Familia, the Aryan Brotherhood, and now the Mexican Mafia are only a small fraction of what has directly evolved from this class action lawsuit. I'll get back to that in a minute, but the other fallout that's also attributed directly to this is the record high increase in inmate-on-inmate homicides. In comparison to the 80s and 90s, the number of deaths that CDCR is recording right now in the last 10 years since 2015 is off the charts. And again, it's because of this convoluted mix of violent-prone inmates that CDCR now has out there on its main lines. You know, my channel, as well as several other channels on YouTube, have all covered some of these inmate deaths. And to be honest with you guys, there's been so many that it's hard to keep track of them. You know, some of the pictures that you guys are looking at right now isn't even a fraction of some of the deaths that have happened over the last 10 years. And here's why CDCR has lost control of its system. Right now, out there on some of the worst level 4 main lines, High Desert, Salinas Valley, Centinela, California State Prison, Sacramento, Pelican Bay, Corcoran, Kern Valley State Prison, Tehachapi, and Lancaster, you have your regular level 4 inmates out there who have already proven that they're violent. That's why they're out there on a level 4 yard right now. You have your regular level 4 inmates out there who have already proven themselves to have a strong propensity to commit acts of violence. This is the reason why they're out there on a level 4 yard in the first place. Then you have all the validated gang leaders from California's main 4 prison organizations: the NF, the Mexican Mafia, the BGF, and the Aryan Brotherhood. These are basically all the leaders that were released from the SHU under the Ashker and Troxel rulings. Next, you have all the auxiliary forces from these 4 groups, all the soldiers that are more than willing to commit the bidding for these organizations. And most of these guys that were released from the SHU fell under the criteria of belonging to one of the STGs, the security threat groups. And then again, others have served multiple SHUs in the past for committing previous acts of violence. And then on top of all that, you have your death row inmates, which some might argue could be considered as being your most violent prone inmates in the state of California. If that's not a recipe for disaster, then I don't know what is. But anyways, getting back to the federal indictments that you guys are seeing right now, is anyone really surprised that you're seeing this? I mean, these are the masterminds and the catalysts of these criminal organizations. The same ones that were able to orchestrate their extortion brackets, move their clavo, and maintain the rest of their business endeavors while they were slammed down in the SHU. So now that these guys have access at all these resources, is anyone really surprised that they're breaking all this ground and that they're now getting caught up in these federal indictments? And I'll tell you what the last part of this is that makes it the perfect storm. It's the steady influx of contraband cell phones that gives these guys the ability to network and navigate outside of the prison walls. Guaranteed. I've said this before, but cell phones are a critical component in this process because they're not only an instrumental part of giving these guys the ability to communicate, but it also gives these guys the ability to communicate without detection. Or at least this is what they've been led to believe. Have you guys ever wondered why CDCR, the feds, and local law enforcement haven't done more to curb, stop, and impede the constant influx of cell phones that are being smuggled into the prison system? It's crazy. Look at these pictures. There's got to be close to 800 to 1,000 cell phones in some of these pictures. And at anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 a cell phone, that's a booming industry. They're making a lot of money. Somebody's making a lot of money. You know, to be fair, they probably couldn't shut it all the way down and stop it completely because there's too many compromised COs that are bringing in phones and it's too profitable. But if they wanted, they could not only stop a good number of them from coming in, but more importantly, they could also make having them in designated areas redundant. What I mean is this: if they really wanted to stop what they call the contraband cell phone crisis, they have technology that would in essence stop a cell phone from picking up a signal in a designated area, such as a prison. The technology is called a cell phone jammer or a signal jammer. It works by emitting a strong radio frequency signal that interferes with the communication between a cell phone and the cell phone tower. It basically can't ping off the tower. But I'll tell you guys why nobody's making a strong push at doing this, because it would be counterproductive. If they did this, it would take away one of the best investigative elements that they have: wiretaps. In almost every last one of these federal indictments, there have been instances where they put wiretaps on either the cell phones that the leaders had or cell phones of some of the key players. You know, for a long time, I wondered why they were dragging their feet on this. But then, as I paid closer attention to the indictments and how they were investigated, I started to see the pattern of how the feds obtained some of their most critical information, and it was through wiretaps. From an investigative standpoint, it's more beneficial for law enforcement for these guys to have cell phones so that they could tap straight into their lines. Anyways, according to one of my sources that was in San Quentin on death row, Ronnie started making some of his real moves when San Quentin had to move the validated gang members from the adjustment center to East Block. Because you gotta remember, back then, East Block was the equivalent to death row's main line. That's where they had the ability to move around a lot more freely. That's where all the contraband was at. Because in East Block, they got contact visits. So while Ronnie was still in the adjustment center, he was able to come up on an occasional cell phone here and there from compromised COs. But they weren't as plentiful in the adjustment center as they were in East Block. And according to what some of my sources told me, Ronnie was doing his thing, controlling the streets of San Diego while he was still in the adjustment center. But he wasn't able to move around the way he needed to until he got to East Block. That's when he had multiple cell phones, a lot more resources, and the ability to maneuver around the way that he needed to. Trust me, all the years that I spent in the adjustment center used to be the place to be for ADSEG inmates. We used to be able to come up on radios over there, and we had it pretty good in comparison to other ADSEGs like East Block. But this was before they put in the solid doors and sealed everything up. In these pictures, you can see the bars and the black mesh over the front of the cells. But then in these other pictures, you can see how they came in and put in the solid walls and the solid doors and sealed everything up. They sealed everything up so tight, you couldn't even hear your neighbor talking to you next door to you. And after they came in and did all that, the adjustment center wasn't cool no more. So once Ronnie got to East Block, his first order of business was to find a good front man. Somebody that could manage all his communications and somebody that could oversee all his street endeavors. Somebody that would basically act as his front man. And from what I understand, he's had several different over the years. They've changed due to some of these guys going out to court, some of these guys getting rolled up and going back to the adjustment center, or other situations that were just beyond their control. So another one of Ronnie's past secretaries was an individual named Elias Lopez, who went by Tremundo from Indio. Tremundo was actually the one who was able to establish contact with the cartels. Not only the Sinaloa cartel, but the Tijuana cartel as well. In fact, here's one of their helicopter pilots sending out a personal shout out to Tremendo. Another video that you're only gonna see right here on Paradigm Media News.
Un saludo para mi compa el Tremendo del Campo, hasta Indio, California, de Culiacán, Sinaloa, de parte de su compa Chino Piloto. Viejón, échale ganas, estamos a la orden. Inspeccionó la avioneta siempre antes de agarrar.
So as of recently, he's had Anthony Sparza, Snappy from Coachella, take care of these things for him. Speaking of Snappy, I did a video about an incident that he was involved in that you guys might want to check out as well. The name of the video is called Snappy Tries to Kick His Way Back into Good Standings. It's basically about Snappy kicking a Samoan Mexican mafia member named Freddy Fuviaba, Smokey, from Linwood's Young Crowd. In fact, Smokey's another Mexican mafia member that I met in the adjustment center in the 90s. But at the time of this incident, Smokey and Ronnie were bumping heads. So Snappy basically took it upon himself to kick Smokey, thinking that this was gonna earn him some brownie points. You know, like I said in that video, a lot of people would probably consider what he did as a PC move, because when he kicked Smokey, he was in handcuffs and he had his back turned. Anyways, for those of you who are wondering why Ronnie would have somebody like Snappy oversee his communications and his business endeavors, it all comes down to security. Because due to the fact that Ronnie's a purported Mexican mafia leader, he got a lot more negative attention and a lot more scrutiny from the gang intel officers. So it's always smarter to have somebody else hold your contraband and act as your secretary. Gang leaders, or those who tend to have a lot of influence over other inmates, are more susceptible to getting their cells searched or to having their movements watched a lot more closely. So it just made more sense, and that's what you do. You appoint someone to act as your buffer, and that's what Snappy did for Ronnie. Anyways, what's important to understand is that when it comes to San Diego, there's several Mexican mafia members that want a piece of that pie. Ronnie and his brother Hector were just two of many. You also have Richard Buchanan, who goes by Richie from Otay. Then there's Jose Marquez, Bat from Del Sol, Frank Madrigal, Chino from National City, Ronald Besa, Turtle from Black Angels, Rudy Espudo, Crazy from Escondido, Robert Marin, Tawa from San Diego, Carlos Diaz, Robot, Sal Diaz, and Luis Garcia, Boo Boo, who are all from Logan Heights. You know, the Mexican Mafia has always considered San Diego to be a lucrative area. Most, if not all, the street gangs out there are loyal backers of the Mexican Mafia and have been in line with the Mexican Mafia's taxation program for years. But there's several Mexican Mafia members from San Diego that can be credited with being some of the early pioneers that have broken a lot of ground and have opened up a lot of doors for the Mexican Mafia. Bat is definitely one of them. He's probably opened up more doors out there single-handedly himself than anyone else out there. And when it comes to San Diego, don't forget about Bat. Ronnie's a powerful guy, but Bat, he's highly underrated. David Popeye Barone was another one. These two were the first ones to broker an alliance with the Arellano Felix brothers and the Tijuana cartel. In fact, Popeye actually opened up the door for Bat, the same cartel that was considered to be the Sinaloa cartel's arch nemesis, headed by none other than Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. So considering what's happened in the past and considering the history that the Arellano Felix brothers have had with the Mexican Mafia, it doesn't surprise me that Ronnie would make an attempt at making a power grab offering Chapo protection. But I'll get into that later on in this story. I don't want to start overloading you guys with too much information where I start losing some. But here's another important part of this story. On June 25th, 1994, Bat attended a meeting with about a dozen other Mexican Mafia members at the Days Inn Motel in Monterey Park. The purpose of that meeting was for them to discuss how they were going to start working with the cartel. However, unbeknownst to them, the FBI and the LA County Sheriff comprised a surveillance team that was covertly and electronically monitoring that meeting. And this will come back to hurt Bat years later. So 3 years later, in June of 1997, Bat had just paroled from prison. And when he paroled, a surveillance team followed him and watched him cross the border into TJ. This is when Bat teamed up with Popeye and the two became enforcers for the Tijuana cartel. So in November of 1997, that same year, Bat was part of a hit team that took out 2 police officers in front of the Tijuana courthouse. And later that same month, an editor from the Zeta newspaper implicated Bat and Popeye as the 2 shooters. As a result, later that month, on November 27th, 1997, Popeye and his team ambushed that editor and attempted to take him out. So the editor, he ended up getting wounded. Popeye, on the other hand, got hit in the eye by a bullet that ricocheted and he died. Bat continued to work with the Arellano Felix brothers, but things were different after Popeye's death. Not only that, but a news journalist named Chris Blatchford started running stories about Popeye and Bat. And when he ran these stories, he also included those undercover videos that were used in the indictments. So the Arellano Felix brothers, they really didn't pay close attention to the videos that came out in the early 90s in those indictments. They didn't pay close attention to them until Chris Blatchford started running stories on them. That's when they paid attention and they seen what the videos were really about. In the videos, Bat and other Mexican Mafia members talk about taking over the Tijuana cartel, which obviously didn't go over well with the Arellano Felix brothers. Anyways, aside from the indictments that took place in the early 90s, there were other big indictments that happened over the years, but I'm not going to get into all those. For the purpose of this story, I'll go as far back as 2006, but since this story is mainly about San Diego, I'm going to focus more on the indictments that came out about San Diego. You know, even though I went forward in time and told you guys about what happened with Bat and Popeye, I'm going to go back in time now so that I can tell you about some of the other investigations. So in June of 2006, Raul Leon, Weddle Sherm from Shelltown, and Richard Martinez Gato, also from San Diego, were indicted with 36 other members and associates in an operation called Operation in the Hat. You just gotta love some of the names that law enforcement comes up with for some of these operations. I'm thinking that they came up with this one to send a subliminal message to Weddle Sherm, because this was after Weddle Sherm was exposed for those leaked videos when he agreed to those interviews with SSU. So as far as I know, this was the first time that federal prosecutors used RICO statutes to go after a street gang in San Diego. But these prosecutors were just getting warmed up. There was a landslide of indictments that were forthcoming, and the FBI was about to hit the Mexican Mafia with a series of RICO operations. So by this time, Bat was already plugged in with the cartels, and he was supplying San Diego with most of the D that they were getting. However, Bat's legal problems were about to start heating back up as well. Sometime around June of 2008, Bat was captured on a number of FBI intercepted calls that he made to an apartment of an EME crew chief by the name of Ditos. Ditos, Spanish for fingers, was working at the direction of several San Diego Mexican Mafia members to control the streets and organize the street gangs in the area on the Mexican Mafia's behalf. Ditos from National City was actually one of Weddle Sherm's proteges. They were sealed up for close to 6 years in the SHU in Pelican Bay. When Ditos paroled from Pelican Bay, Weddle Sherm and several other Mexican Mafia members loaded him up with a lot of responsibility and a variety of directives, all in the hopes of establishing San Diego and tapping into the lucrative market out there. However, unbeknownst to those he was working under, including Weddle Sherm, Ditos began cooperating with the Violent Crimes Task Force and became an embedded source for the FBI. You know, I honestly believe that this guy was brokenhearted, that Weddle Sherm got wrapped up, and that him cooperating had a lot to do with that. He praised the ground that Weddle Sherm walked on, and he changed after Weddle Sherm got caught up. Check out this other exclusive video that you're only going to see right here on Paradigm Media News. Listen to the way that he talks about Weddle Sherm, and then you guys tell me what you think.
This is Devils from San Diego. A brief thing on me, and it don't make me an expert, it don't make me a professional. I believe that at the end of this game, I was one of the best there was. But I grew up in National City, California, 5 miles from the border. I grew up with nothing but gang members. I grew up with nothing but violence. I grew up with nothing but drugs. That's who we looked up to. And you know, at the age of 13, I got the nickname Fingers. I've always been known as Weddle. But I got the nickname Fingers at 13, robbing 300-400 houses, residential burglaries in East Lake, Chula Vista. I've been through the system, be it juvenile hall, to Campo, to YA. And in those institutions is where I learned my craft, or I learned to be who I was. And a lot of that made me who I was. And the bonds I formed in juvenile hall, I was still with some of them dudes back in prison, to where it's harder for law enforcement to infiltrate us, just for the simple fact we all grew up together. We all know each other somehow, some way. Or I can say, where are you from? Who's your family? And they should be there. Or it's easy to run a check on that. So it's harder to infiltrate us. But throughout my time, I ended up in corporate SHU, where to this day, as far as stabbings, there's not too many people. There's motherfuckers that got more murders than me. But as far as stabbing assaults, I had 16 stabbing assaults by the age of 19 years old. I gained power and became a llavero at the age of 19 through Weddle Sherm. Raul Leon, he was in Pelican Bay at that time. And that was my goal, to get to Pelican Bay. That was my goal, to hook up with Sherm. And I tell people that all the time. It's not even, you know, the belief of the inmate or the belief of the mafia. At that age, especially that young, I was so entrenched in my neighborhood and my mindset that if someone would have said, hey, inmate, I would have been like, man, fuck them, National City gang. And but believing in Sherm and believing in our brother, and that's how a lot of that goes. It's not even about the whole belief as itself. You know, Sherm's one of the smartest dudes I know, man. He taught me almost everything I know. And once I got up there, he was like my mentor, and we were studies for 6 years. And we gained nothing but plans. And when you got 23 hours a day to plot and plan and create something, it's easy to do. You know, when we were in Pelican Bay, Sherm orchestrated, and we ran 15 prisons at that time. And we were putting out over 500 letters a month to different inmates, to different people. And we're doing it for 2 reasons. One reason was power and to control the prison system. The second reason was, of course, money. And believe it or not, it's always about money, be it cartel stuff, street stuff, whatever. But in the system, when you don't have that money, it's hard to get money without power. Power is what brings you money. And Sherm realized that, and I realized that through him. And when it was all said and done, by the time I left Pelican Bay, I ended up doing 12 years. 11 of those years was in the hole, in isolation, or in lockdown units. I was in corporate SHU, which was called Gladiator School at the time, for 2 years. And when I did come to the street, I came out there with a vengeance. I came out there with a plan. I came out there with the mindset and the mentality of, man, like he told me one time when we were sitting in the cell, if I make you a brother, kid, you can be a brother, but if you sit here, you just sit here. Making you a brother is like giving you wings. And if you're not prepared to fly with it, what's the point of doing it? So when I came out flying. I came out with everything I had into this, and that's what I ended up becoming.
So Ditos, he also wrote a book called Shot Caller, The Life of a Mexican Mafia Soldier. And for those of you that might inquire, I don't think you can find this book anywhere. I don't believe it's being published anymore, unless you can find it somewhere like on eBay where somebody bought it and then now they're selling it after it stopped being published. So in the end, Ditos' cooperation was fundamental in the prosecution of Bat. Ditos orchestrated a controlled buy with Bat's wife, who at that time was a highly placed senora. So the controlled buy took place in Ditos' apartment, and during the transaction, Bat called his wife's cell phone to push the transaction through. And obviously the feds recorded the entire call. This ended up being an expensive call, one that I'm sure Bat regretted making, because it ended up costing him 20 years in prison. Anyways, keep in mind that before Ronnie took over San Diego and divvied it up between his brother Hector and Richie, there were other Mexican Mafia members that were overseeing some of the same cities that he was just recently overseeing himself. Richie was given control of the east side of San Diego and the South Bay. Hector was given North County and Chula Vista. And then Ronnie had Spring Valley, Paradise Hills, National City, and pretty much everything else. To put it in perspective, Hector and Richie, they had small areas of San Diego. They had small pockets. Ronnie, he had everything else. He ran that city almost single-handedly himself. But all these unclaimed cities only came up for grabs after these other Mexican Mafia members all went down on indictments. One of the first ones to get taken down in a series of federal indictments was Rudy Espudo, Crazy. Crazy is undoubtedly a true Mexican Mafia believer, and he's proven this on several different occasions before in the past. It's obvious that he's serious when it comes to dedicating his life to the Mexican Mafia, and that's his business. So here's another exclusive audio clip that you're only going to hear right here on Paradigm Media News. It's basically Crazy indoctrinating several young camaradas about the responsibilities and expectations of being a stand-up sureño.
Yeah, you always do what you can for one another, because someday, this is where I came from. ¿Me entiendes?
Yeah.
Yo sí soy carnal, pero soy carnal porque I was a camarada. You know, so I never forget where I came from, because that's where we all began. ¿Me entiendes? So always conduct yourselves appropriately. There may be times where, let's just say they had us all there in the vent in deep sink, and all you got is one little piece of fucking desodorante. Well, you know what, that little ass piece, we're all gonna so at least one day out of the fucking week or 2 days out of the week, we don't smell like motherfucking motherfucking wet dog, you know? ¿Me entiendes? You know, we're put in a fucked up situation. Estamos acá atrás, but we're all we got is each other. You know? So I want you to always step back and always, at the end of the day, man, watch, at the end of the day, always step back and reflect what occurred, what you saw, what you learned, ¿me entiendes? Or just be grateful for a little something that occurred that day, you know, like orale, you know? At the end of the day, you get a correo, good news, no matter what it is, just at the end of the day, reflect upon what went on, you know? Pero ustedes de camaradas, you don't do that, man. And if another camarada brings it to your attention and you see no wrong in it, then shame on you. The líneas are fucked up out there. There's not too many vatos out there to dar la buena clecha that the camaradas need, you know? And sometimes some of the camaradas we have out there, they're so focused on trying to get to the top, they forget the man to the right and to the left. Okay? So, right now, ustedes tienen la oportunidad
to pick at my brain and to see how a carnal views things, you know? ¿Me entiendes?
Yeah.
And the only way you're gonna do that is by bringing certain things to light. You know? This, what you guys brought to me, is a learning experience. Para todos, not only for that man, well, apparently he's not picking up what is being laid down, you know? Pero para ustedes escuchar de mí cómo lo voy, how I see it, how I navigate through this, you know? At the same time, my perspective on why you don't do it, and you should have said, sorry, you should have realized you're wrong, orale, you know? So forth. So when there's an issue, you guys always want to talk amongst ustedes, and if ¿me entiendes? That way you guys can always school the next camarada chavalón that comes in your cell, you know? One or two of you vatos, let's say Stoppers by himself, and an 18-year-old, 19 youngster comes back here for fucking whacking a rata. Well, everything Stoppers learned, shit like this proper etiquette, a way that a soldado, a camarada should conduct himself amongst his peers, y con los feelings, hey, he's to pass it down, you know? So that's why everything, situation that's here, you want it running like a smooth motherfucking machine, máquina. And it's a good thing que me avisaron, you guys brought to my attention. It's small and petty, but it's a learning experience at the same time. ¿Me entiendes? Do you understand?
Understand?
You know, so, oh, no. Hey. You guys don't feel fucking, if you're not sure about something, or, it may, you know, let's say even something occurred 2 years ago, but you were unclear on why it occurred or something, or a perspective, I don't give a fuck, you can ask me, you know? You know, you guys don't be shy. I'm a man just like you guys. Don't be shy just because who I am, or feel that, oh, this brother's gonna think que soy llorón. Nah. The only way you're gonna learn is by asking. ¿Me entienden?
Simón.
Yeah, so anything you guys got, you know, or if there's fucking fellow in between you and another motherfucker, and, you know, two fucking knuckleheads can't come to common ground, hey, well, you know what, then bring it to the higher courts for a solution. It's better that way, and maybe I can find an appropriate solution than two camaradas stabbing themselves over something that could have been resolved another way.
That's right.
You know, you gotta keep in mind, you know what's happening out there in the linea. As a matter of fact, on one of the level 4 yards, I want you guys to pay close attention, you know? If you guys get back out there, avoid shit like this.
We're all validated, crazy.
Okay, well, you don't have to worry about it, but if you have another camarada that's going through something similar to what I'm going to explain to you guys,
Right.
then you can always pass down your wisdom to him.
Right.
You know, hey, you know, esto, this is wrong, this is the way that it should be, you know. Todos ustedes that are in the bench son camaradas. As camaradas, what are your guys' priorities?
Safety, security, the camarada, and the unity.
Okay, Stamper. One more time. Tell me. Okay, well, could I ask Stamper, where's Stamper? He asleep on me up there. I'm gonna make that boy do 1,000 burpees. He gonna wake up.
No, he's right here, but, you can't fit in this bench right here. Hold on.
Órale. Fast. Tu compañero.
Yeah, as my sister said, unity, make sure we're all on the same page, you know what I mean? So when we strive together.
Shay.
Solidarity. One jumps, we all jump.
Okay, now you notice how some responses are the same, some are different.
Yep.
None of them is wrong. ¿Me entiendes? They're all correct. Because that's what keeps us together. That's what keeps the sting of ours alive. You see? Different ways of expressing it or different pieces, but at the end of the day, that's what it all takes. Everything that ustedes say. Your loyalty as camaradas lies con la M, con los otros. That's why there's a difference. That's why we refer to the camaradas as camaradas, and we refer to sureños as the sureños. Now, I don't know if many of you been told or know, but you're hearing it. Every brother has a different perspective, you know. Pero los camaradas son los soldados de los otros that are there for us hasta la muerte, fuerte hasta la muerte, you know. Camaradas, their loyalty lies con la M. ¿Me entiendes? That's a camarada. Camaradas is where we make brothers from. ¿Me entiendes? That's where the carnales come from. En los camaradas. All of us que somos casados, all of us that got married, we were all camaradas at one point. So ustedes are doing what you're doing to get to the top. And it's only from that cream of the crop, de los camaradas, that we're going to go. You know what I mean? Now, we're not going to go pick a sureño. So there's a reason why you guys are called camaradas. And not everybody is a camarada. So you guys should not be bumping heads, because you guys are supposed to be the cream of the crop. You guys are separating, and there's a distinction between a sureño and a camarada. Always remember that. You know, yo soy camarada. That's the reason why sometimes our ask, hey, watch out, okay, somebody introduce me and tell me, órale, watch out. Or, hey, eres camarada or eres sureño? You know? And I do it for a reason, or ask for a reason. Con ustedes, I don't have to right here. Homeboy ya me dijo, el Casper. So you guys, if you can, always be united. You're only as strong as your fucking weakest link. You get 5 shoelaces, right? Now, get 1 shoelace and 2 guys tug on it. With so much pressure, it's only so much fucking pressure that they can take. You want that after a certain amount of time, it's gonna snap. Get the second shoelace and wind it up with the first one. Now what? It's stronger, it carries more weight. Get that third one, that fourth one, that fifth one, twine that motherfucker together. And now what, you got a thick ass fucking rope that can fucking tug a load. And it's gonna endure, it's gonna last. Ustedes de camaradas siempre deben estar así. You know? That's what's gonna keep those swine.
You know, I'm not sure where that recording took place at, but it's obvious that Crazy wasn't aware of the fact that he was being recorded when he was schooling these youngsters. At any rate, in one of the biggest federal indictments that would be forthcoming, Crazy and 51 other associates and members of his crew were indicted in a federal RICO operation called Operation Notorious County. At the time, Crazy was working with the Diablos. He was also tapped in with Barrio San Marcos and with Barrio Fallbrook locals. So Sal Colabella was the next Mexican Mafia member to go down. In a federal operation called Operation Carnalismo, Sal was taken down with 35 other associates and members of his street crew. 8 were charged in one indictment with a conspiracy to conduct enterprise affairs, violent crime in aid of racketeering, VCAR, distribution, and conspiracy to distribute Black, Chris, and Fetty. They wiped these guys out, or like they normally do with these kind of indictments. They just threw everything up at the wall and seen what would stick. But after they took Crazy and Sal down, then they came in and hit the street level guys with the cleanup indictment called Operation 12 Step. This was the final sweep, or the cleanup phase of it, where they took down the facilitators, the communicators, and the go-betweens. The gangs that were targeted in this operation were Barrio Chula Vista, Eastside Piru, Old Town National City, Shelltown, National City Locals, Imperial Beach Imperials, Paradise Hills, Barrio Encanto Locals, and the National City Block Boys. You know, some of my past stories, I talked about some of the Mexican Mafia's pioneers and some of the innovators that helped establish the taxation program on the streets, as well as the cultivation of the Mesa system. Individuals like Popeye from Harpies, Guero Caballo from 18th Street, Sleepy from Rimas, Chewy from V&E, Sana from OC, Guero Sherm from Shelltown, and Puppet from 18th Street, just to name a few. There's many more, but these are just a few. You know, these were the visionaries and the innovators that helped break ground and establish the taxation and extortion policies on the streets. Some of these guys were the ones that were out there on the streets regulating it and refining it. Now, I can't say that Mosca was originally the one that established the county jail tax program, but I can say that Mosca was the one that refined it and regulated it to the point to where it became a booming black market. And